Hello, my name is Jennifer Wilson, and I'm with the Gulfport School District, and today we're going to talk about 4th grade standard RL.4.3, describing characters, setting, and events. Let's get started. All right, so first thing is, what makes a story? In literature, you are going to see 5 elements in every fiction story. You're going to see your characters, your setting, your plot or the events, and problem and solution. So today we're going to talk about what are the characters. When we look at stories, every story has a character. They can be the people in the story, they can be animals that are acting like people, or they can be objects that are taking on the role of people. I've listed a couple of pictures of some famous characters that you're probably familiar with. But every single one of them has done something in the book. They're either a main character or they are just a minor character. So let's talk about character traits. When we're talking about character traits, we're talking about the ways we can describe a character. You can look for the way that they are thinking. You can look at words that are describing how they're feeling, and then also those emotions that they may have. You can use those adjectives to describe your characters. And it could also be in a particular time of the story, or you can see character traits that run throughout the story. But a lot of times with those character traits, you can relate to the character with whatever is going on with them. So next we're going to talk about the setting. The setting is the location that the story takes place. It's also the time of the story. It could be daytime or nighttime. It could be something that happened in the past, or it could be something present day. But one thing about the setting is just as important as the characters and the events in the story. The setting often will set the tone, and also it relates to what is happening in the story or those events. All right, so when we're talking about problem or conflict in solution or resolution, your characters are going to have some kind of problem that they have to deal with. It's something that causes trouble for that character, and it is part of the plot or the events. Either a character is trying to overcome something, or they're dealing with something and they're not really sure how to deal with that. That can affect also their character traits, depending on what's happening in the story. And the solution is how the character or characters overcome the problem in their story. It is also a part of the plot or the events. And then also that can help with when you're describing the character traits and what they're going through. All right, so let's look at some examples of a story of literature or a fiction story. From the stage, Luke could see hundreds of people out in the audience. That's when his nerves got the best of him, and he forgot every line he had learned over the past few months of practice. Earlier that morning, Luke had told his mom how nervous he was and that he was worried he would freeze up while on stage. She reassured him that he could do anything he put his mind to, including acting in this play. He thought back to that conversation and looked to his play director for some encouragement. She nodded her head in his direction, when suddenly he snapped out of the trance he was in. All of his lines came flooding back to his memory, and he began belting out his lines one after the other. When he left the stage, the crowd roared their approval with applause and cheers. Even though it was a rough start to the performance, now Luke couldn't wait to get back on stage. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at those different elements in the story that we just talked about. So first thing, let's talk about our character and character traits. Okay, so we have Luke is our main character. And looking at the story, He's talking about something that he is dealing with while going to perform on stage. So those character traits that I would use is nervous, anxious, terrified, because we can see that he is having some trouble with being nervous, and he's afraid that he's going to freeze up on stage. So we see clues in the story about what is happening to our character. All right, so next thing is the setting. We can see from the first sentence in our story that he's on stage, because we see that there's an audience and that he is about to perform for this audience. All right, so our events are the plot. What is happening in the story? Luke is worried about performing on stage. His mom reassures him that everything will be fine. He froze for a moment, but he saw his mom and remembered his lines. And once he performed, the crowd loved the performance and he was ready to perform more on stage. So that is what is happening in the story. We do have a problem because while he was on stage, Luke froze and forgot his lines and he had stage fright. So how did he overcome that, or his solution? He saw his mom. His mom gave him a look of encouragement, and the show went on. So even a short story like this, you see those elements and we're able to identify those in our story. So let's do one more. Today had been the worst day ever, and Colin was certain that there was no way that it would get any better. From the time he woke up and realized he was already late, he knew it was going to be a no good, terribly horrible, amazingly awful, incredibly bad day. He forgot to brush his teeth before he walked out the door. He put on 2 different shoes and he ran out the door before he could eat breakfast. All day he felt like there was a smooth coating of slime covering his teeth, and his best friend made fun of him for wearing 2 different shoes. When he got to PE, his gym teacher made him sit on the sidelines because he was wobbly on 2 different shoes. When he sat down for lunch, he realized that he had left his lunch in the refrigerator and he was out of money in the cafeteria. When he finally got home, he plopped down on the couch to watch a show and forget about his bad day. Colin wanted to scream when the screen was blank and he realized the cable was out. He decided right then and there that the best solution was just to go straight to bed and not come out till morning. This particular story we've probably related to. We probably had those mornings that we just couldn't get anything right and the rest of the day was just crazy. But that's one thing you can do with those fiction stories, is you can find something that you can relate to. So our character we know is Colin. So let's describe Colin. All right, so he's probably a little frustrated because his day has started off pretty bad and it kind of went downhill for the rest of the day. He's probably upset. We can see in the story those things that maybe that caused him to be upset. And at the end, he just feels defeated, like nothing was going his way. So he just basically said, I give up. All right, so our setting. With our story here, our setting actually changes. We start off at home, and then we go to school, and then we're back home again. So sometimes in your story, the setting will often change. All right, so those events that happened. Colin woke up late, and he just had a series of bad events until he went to bed for the night. Our problem. Colin just had a horrible day. One thing after the other just kept happening and things just snowballed from there. So his solution was what probably a lot of us do, is we just go on to bed just to forget about what had happened. So there you can see another story that has those same elements, and you will see that throughout your fiction stories. So today we learned about characters, character traits, the setting, the plot or the events, and the problem and solution. So next time you read your story, You be sure to look for those elements and find them, and they will help you understand what you're reading.